All right, so we are here at the Space Access Conference in Phoenix, Arizona with Paul Damphousse, who is the recent new president of the National Space Society. Thank you very much for sitting down and joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, how did you first get interested in space?
It's probably since before I can remember. I've got an older brother who was active during the 1960s and was building all the models from the space program and from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I think it just transferred to me by osmosis, and then so he outgrew that and moved on to the other things that he was interested in, but it just stayed with me. So that was really my first where I really caught the bug, but it's always stayed with me from that point, and I always knew that I was going to do a career in space.
So how did you first get started working in space?
So I joined the Marine Corps, went in as a pilot. My long-term goals were to become an astronaut. So about halfway through my career, I had the opportunity to go to the Naval Postgraduate School and get a degree in astronautical engineering. And so the way that the Marine Corps structures the program is that you spend a few years getting your degree, and then you immediately go into doing what's called a utilization tour. So I spent a couple years in Monterey getting my degree, and then I went on to United States Space Command. So did a few years there. Then I had the opportunity to go back to the cockpit for a few years, did a few tours in Iraq, then came back into a space job, from which I retired in Washington, D.C. And so right when I retired is when I took this job.
How did it work out that you became the president of the National Space Society?
Yeah, we had talked a couple of years ago about the possibility of my coming on board. We weren't able to make it work at that time. I did join the board shortly thereafter, and so I got to know a lot more about the organization. I've been a member since 1999. But I really saw the inner workings of the organization. I'd seen the reputation of the organization from the outside, and the organization was always had a great reputation, and was effective in shaping policy and advocating for our long-term goals of space settlement. When I came on the board, I got to learn some of the way that the organization works on the inside, and so they were looking at making a transition the end of last year, and they approached me and said, would you consider doing this position again? And so we were able to hammer out an agreement, and here we are.
So what sort of plans or what sort of projects would you want to have happen with the National Space Society?
Right. So our chief goal is because we are a 501c3 education organization, that's a big part for us. We have members, we have individual members, we have chapters, and we're soon to have corporate members as well. So in that, our role is to provide an education service for those entities, but also to provide education in the form of advocacy, going up on Capitol Hill and advocating for certain positions, doing public outreach things. That's where our chapters really come in, because with 50-plus chapters scattered throughout the United States and a few around the world, it gives us the opportunity to do a sort of decentralized execution of these things. So these chapters, some of them are very small and some of them are larger than others, but those are the places where we can really get down to the people on the street and educate them about space, because we really don't hear a lot about space in the media. So that's number one. That's sort of mission number one, is really that advocacy and education role. Beyond that, one of the things that I'm really trying to do with the organization since I've taken over is sort of breaking out of what I call the echo chamber. In space advocacy, we tend to get into a pattern where we end up talking to ourselves or to each other. So I may attend a conference where you're on a panel and I'm in the audience. And then the next conference, I might be on a panel and you're in the audience. And we tend to talk in a community. What I'm trying to do is really break out of that and try to get our organization and space into the more mainstream and educate people as to what their space program on a national level, what their space program really does for them. And a lot of folks out there still think that the space program, that NASA's portion of the federal budget, is a significant portion of the budget, on the order of 4 or 5, some people even think 10% of the budget, and they're shocked to realize that it's less than half of 1% of the budget. And people it's easier for people to then make the jump that we really get a high payoff from what our space program does for us. So it really all does come back to educating, advocating, and shaping the future that we want.